Hi everyone, here today with my July wrap-up. I read a ton in July. I read 18 books. A good part of that was the Booktubeathon. I read 7 books in 7 days. I did a separate wrap-up for those books, so if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on those, I'm going to link the video down below. But that still leaves me with 11 books to talk about, so let's jump in. First, I'll talk about the 5 graphic novels I read. The first 2 being volumes 2 and 3 of Alex+Ada by Johnathon Luna. This completes the trilogy, all about a man in a near future who is gifted an AI, an artificial intelligence. And he really becomes enamored by this woman, Ada, and decides to make her sentient, even though that breaks the law. And the last 2 volumes basically wrap up the trilogy. I really appreciate a graphic novel series with a finite ending. It's this nice small story arc, and I think the narrative just works really well. It doesn't drag on, and definitely the author, Johnathon Luna, had a very good idea of where he wanted to take the story, so highly recommend the graphic novel. I think the whole series is really good. It was a solid 4 stars for me, and I just, really enjoyed it. I then read Saga Volume 6 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Not a lot you need to say about this one, other than the fact that I really enjoyed it. I think it's a good continuation of the series. Lots of humor, lots of fun, lots of action, lots of romance. I think the series is really back on track, and I'm definitely enjoying these latest volumes. Finally, I started a new graphic novel series, which I haven't heard much about on Booktube. That being Wayward, which I read volumes 1 and 2. They're both by Jim Zub. And this is a kind of fantasy, adventure, action series about a teenage girl who's biracial. She's half Japanese and half Irish. She grew up in Ireland and is now moving to Japan. Once she gets there, she starts to discover that she has these superpowers, and then meets other teenagers with similar powers. And with that, kind of gets wrapped into some Japanese demons that are terrorizing people. It's almost a plot that reminds me a little bit of Sailor Moon. Not as much romance as Sailor Moon by any means, but a similar idea of teenagers with superheroes fighting demons in Japan. I think the artwork in the story is stunning. I love the color palette with kind of lots of like soft blues and purples. It's not the kind of graphic novel I would normally turn to. I don't read a lot of action-based graphic novels, but for whatever reason, this one really hooked me in. I just got really wrapped into the story. As soon as I finished volume 1, I just had to pick up volume 2, which doesn't happen a lot for me, so I always take that as a good sign. So another solid 4-star read for me. I also listened to 3 audiobooks this month, the first one being After I Do by Jenkins-Reid. Now, I was told about this author from the wonderful Jenny from Adultish books. I'll link her channel down below. And I'd never heard of this author, but Jenny's just been raving about her books, and I can see why. I'm completely enamored by her books, and I'm really enjoying listening to them in audio. The first book I read, After I Do, is about a young woman who is married for several years, and basically her marriage is just kind of becomes stagnant, and she feels that she's fallen out of love with her husband. They decide to take a year-long separation where they're not allowed to talk to each other, can do their own thing, see other people, and basically starts this year of a bit of an experiment in their marriage, and also a chance to really evaluate what they want. And I think Jenkins-Reid is an amazing author at exploring relationships, not just romantic ones, but other, family ties and friendships. And I just found the book really good. Definitely starts out sad because it is about a couple separating, but overall it's a very positive and heartwarming story, and I just really enjoyed it. So that one ended up being a 4.5-star read for me. Highly recommend. I think it's my favorite of hers that I've read so far. The other book by her that I listened to on audio was One True Loves, which is about a woman whose husband goes down in a helicopter crash. She believes him dead. He's basically declared dead by the state, and she goes on to try to pick up her life and ends up falling in love with someone else and becoming engaged years later. But eventually her previous husband shows up saying, "I'm still alive, I never died." And so now she has the conflict that she's in love with 2 different people. Certainly a love triangle is an old trope in books, but I find she made it a way to make them really new again, and I found the book to just be very engaging, very fresh. Again, she's so good at talking about relationships, and you can see yourself in that situation, and it really was a big conundrum. I had no idea which way the book was going to go and how it was going to resolve itself. And it's a brand new release this year, and definitely one of the strongest contemporaries I've read. I'm not entirely sure which one I love more of these first two. I think I'm more of a fan of After I Do, but One True Loves is still a great story. If I had one complaint, it was that it was shorter than I wanted. I wish it had been even longer. But, you know, very good and was great on audio. I love the narrator who reads all of her books. I listened to one last audiobook this month, and that was Sworn to Silence by Linda Castillo. And this is a mystery suspense book. I was originally under the impression it was more of a cozy mystery. It's an older title, but a lot of people have really raved about it being one of those awesome mystery books. Got a lot of great ratings from some of my Goodreads friends, so I was excited to pick it up. And when I realized that I'd read books by the same narrator on audio, I was definitely excited to pick it up in audiobook form. And wow, this book blew me away. First off, I need to say that this is not the cozy mystery I thought it was. Instead, it's a very violent, gritty book. Some very dark subject matter in here, tons of trigger warnings, and definitely one of the more dark and disturbing mysteries that I have ever read in terms of how the murder is described, and it's just very dark. The basic synopsis is that a girl is found murdered, and the way that she's murdered lets the police know that this looks very similar to an old cold case about a serial murderer who was around years ago. And the chief of police, Kate, is in charge of investigating this murder. And what makes this really tricky is the fact that she believes that the person who did the serial killing years ago, she believes she knows who that was, but due to her own personal involvement in the case years ago, she has basically never told anyone the truth of what happened and why that serial killer stopped murdering people years ago. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to spoil much, but I love the fact that there's this personal tie between the police and the murder investigation. The serial killer is absolutely creepy, like all of the torture and everything around this murder is just disturbing as anything, especially on audiobook. You can't really skim over paragraphs, so huge warning that if you're not up for dark and gritty, skip this one. But I was completely hooked in, just found myself racing to the end to see who done it. I found the writing to be fantastic. The mystery itself was complex and interesting, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. Gave it 4.5 stars. Definitely one of the best mysteries I've read this year. I'm really looking forward to continuing on with the rest of her series. Finally, I'll talk about the actual physical novels I read. First one being Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And I'm probably going to get some thumbs down for this, but I honestly really disliked Me Before You. I picked it up after seeing the trailer and for the movie, and I thought that I'd really enjoy it. I thought it would be this cute, funny story, and I just had so many problems with it. Without spoiling anything, just was not happy with the ending. It was not a book I wanted to read. It was not the story I wanted to be told. And it just bugged me. I didn't think this story was that great. I thought it was supposed to be a love story, so maybe my expectations were wrong, but I just really did not enjoy it. Moving on, I also read The Secret Place by Tana. I feel like I can't get through a single video without talking about her, one of my favorite authors. But this fifth installment in her Dublin Murder Squad series kind of missed the mark for me. I guess, which is different than her previous books, that this one is written over two different perspectives. One being the detectives and the other ones being the teenage girls. Essentially, this is about a boarding school where a young boy was murdered years ago, and now a clue has come, basically surfaced, where someone has put a note saying, I know why this boy was murdered or who did it. And now the police are kind of reinvestigating, trying to figure out what happened. The premise was good, but I just found myself uninterested in the story. I didn't care a lot about the girls' perspectives. It just kind of talked about their day-to-day lives and who was dating who, and a lot of he said, she said. Normally I really like kind of those books about like boarding schools and girls that have secrets and all of that, but it just didn't work for me. And because it was told in two perspectives, the detectives didn't get as much character building as in her previous books, so I really never got to know the detectives. I usually really love how she spends time giving them backstories, but these ones just really fell flat for me. I know other people love this fifth book, but for me it wasn't what I wanted from a Tana French novel, so I was kind of disappointed. However, her new book is still coming out in the fall, and I'm very excited for that one. I'm hoping it's going to be more like her first novels, and I'm definitely going to pick that one up. After that, I read The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, which was a really buzzy book last year. This is about a man who meets a woman in an airport bar, and they basically make plans to murder his wife. And the plot itself is pretty implausible, and you definitely have to suspend some disbelief. But the book did surprise me. I didn't think I'd enjoy it that much, but I read it incredibly fast. I read most of it in one sitting over the course of an afternoon. And it's definitely a quick, fun roller coaster ride. Again, it's not the most plausible mystery, but if you're looking just for that fun book, maybe something to get you out of a reading slump or a page turner for an airplane, this is definitely a good one to pick up. So I can see why it was so buzzy last year, and I'm glad I took the time to pick it up. And that is everything I read this month. Again, please check out my Booktubeathon wrap-up down below if you're interested in the other 7 books I read. As always, if you have any thoughts, recommendations, or opinions on any of the books I read, please comment down below. It's always good to chat more. And let me know what was the best book you read in July. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye.